Good morning, folks. I got into politics to get Brexit done. I could see in 2019 that Theresa May simply wasn't going to deliver it, so I threw my hat in with the Brexit Party. And I stayed in politics because Boris Johnson, contrary to all his promises, didn't get Brexit done. The two deals he signed with the European Union left Northern Ireland behind, over 1 million British citizens thrown under a bus by his withdrawal agreement. And it also hitched the rest of the United Kingdom to the regulatory hip of the European Union, committing to staying in line with them on state aid, competition, employment and environmental law. Yes, he committed us to the net zero target in international treaty with the EU. In that same agreement, he also committed us to staying in the European Convention of Human Rights, paying money into the European Defence Fund for the development of European military hardware and software, and a whole lot else besides. By no measure could that set of agreements be regarded as getting Brexit done. And this is a fundamental ideological difference between Reform UK and Nigel Farage on one side and me on the other. Nigel says that Brexit was done. It's just that we didn't take advantage of it. We didn't move far away enough from the EU in order to reveal the benefits of Brexit. But I completely disagree. I can't make any case for Nigel's position, and it's not just semantics. I can't make any case for it because Northern Ireland's been left behind. What kind of country are we if we don't fight for British citizens? We are knout if we're not prepared to stand for that fight. I also have concerns about Reform UK, then the Brexit Party, because of the structure of the party. As people will probably know by now, Reform UK Limited is a limited company. The political party is a limited company. It has 15 shares, 9 of which are owned by Nigel. And it was Nigel's control of that party, 60% control of that party, that enabled him to stand down 317 candidates in 2019 against Boris Johnson without any consultation of any of us in the party. And he may have had good reasons for doing so in his mind to prevent Jeremy Corbyn getting into office. But actually what we did was deliver Boris Johnson into office and deliver into being the withdrawal agreement which has thrown Northern Ireland under a bus. So I have always had a problem with the structure of Reform UK, and I've always had a problem with the view that Brexit's done. These are fundamental differences. So when Richard Tice approached me in late 2022 to join Reform UK, which had then changed its name from Brexit Party to Reform UK, I said I would only do so if Nigel gave up his shares in the party, democratised it, and that we had a consensual way of running the party. After some discussion, Richard came back to me and said Nigel had refused to sell down his shares into some kind of broader ownership. And further discussions took place. And eventually I agreed to join the party on the strength of a letter that Richard, as leader, wrote to me saying that the party would be run on a consensual basis, that there'd be no deals done with the Tories, that we would fight for Brexit, that Brexit hadn't been done, and that we would fight for Northern Ireland. And so I joined Reform UK, and we had a great time. We went from 6% in the polls in March 2023 to 16% in the polls just before the general election. Richard and I actually led a very successful movement. We created a very successful, broad movement across the country. And then Nigel reappointed himself leader of the party on the 3rd of June. And I knew at that point, frankly, and my inner circle could easily testify to this, that I was extremely concerned when Nigel came back because I had fundamental differences with Nigel on the issue of Brexit, fundamental issues with the way the party was owned and operated. And so, again, privately, I wrote to Richard and to Nigel, I think, in June, just at the beginning of the election, saying, look, when the election's done, we've got to democratise the party. This cannot go on. And I made a similar call towards the tail end of the general election. And to his credit, Nigel, on the 5th of July, declared that they would democratise the party. And on the 22nd of August, Zia Youssef, the new chairman, went on GB News and declared that he had the finest legal minds working, I think he said, day and night on producing a fantastic constitution. But when that constitution turned up on, I think, the 18th of September, I don't know how I remember these dates, but I do. When that constitution turned up on the 18th of September, I realized it was a document that I had looked at a year and a half before and rejected. It simply didn't really work. There'd been a few tweaks made, but it doesn't work. And it absolutely did not have the finest legal minds on it at all. I would question whether it had any legal minds looking at it. At about the same time, Nigel also declared in a little piece to camera that he did that he would convert Reform UK Limited from a company limited by shares to a company limited by guarantee, and that it would be opened up to the so-called members to actually become genuine members because they would collectively own the party. Well, here we are at the end of November, and actually that conversion hasn't taken place. By the way, my lawyer tells me that that conversion cannot take place. You can't convert a company limited by shares to one limited by guarantee. You have to set up a new company. But no new company has been set up. Certainly no new applications have been made to the Electoral Commission. And even the slightly poor document that passes for a constitution has not been put to the Electoral Commission for its approval. So as far as I can see, no tangible steps have been taken to deliver what Nigel and Zia promised they would do, which is adopt this constitution and convert the party into one being genuinely owned by its members. A few other ideological issues have developed between Nigel and Reform on one side and me on the other. And they're these. In an interview, Nigel said that he wasn't against the rapid demographic change in the United Kingdom. It was the cultural aspect of the United Kingdom, the cultural integrity of the United Kingdom that concerned him. Well, for me, the rapid demographic change in the UK is the other side of the same coin of the difficulties we're facing culturally. I don't see how you can separate them. Again, you might see this as semantics. I see it as quite a fundamental point. In the same interview, Nigel said that he was not in favor of mass deportations. Well, I'm firmly in favor of mass deportations. Anyone in this country who is here illegally must be detained and deported. Again, this is not semantics. I think Nigel in a subsequent interview said that there are logistical problems in detaining and deporting so many people. I think there's over 1 million people in the United Kingdom illegally. But I concede that point readily. Of course, there are logistical issues, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. You begin doing it and you keep doing it until it's done, even if it takes a long time. That is the path on which the United Kingdom must set itself. And then I had a particular issue, I think, with Richard Tice saying that he described the gathering on the 20th of September in Whitehall in Parliament Square as that lot, eschewing, I think, the support of our movement, people, valid British citizens who no doubt voted Reform UK. He regarded them as unpalatable, and I imagine in an attempt to sanitize Reform UK, he was prepared to, effectively throw them under a bus. And I have an issue with that. I think we've got to be true to what we believe in. We've got to say it the way it is. This country has had enough of political expediency. We need people to tell it as it is. It is not about political expediency. It is about doing the right thing. And I also have an issue with the way Reform seems obsessed with recruiting Tories. Nigel put out a letter a few weeks ago saying the 1,300 Tory councillors who are coming up for election in May, don't take your chances with the Conservative Party, join Reform UK. And I think there have been a few more defections from the Tory party to Reform, and all of these are trumpeted. But it's our people that should be trumpeted. It's the movement that we created that should be trumpeted, not the people joining from the Tory party who are part of a party that delivered the country into the peril in which we now find ourselves. So I can't understand this obsession with recruiting Tories. Sure, there are some good Tories that are worth recruiting. Suella Braverman, for example. But why would you want to open the party up wholesale to defections from the Conservative Party? And it's also perhaps a slightly quaint approach I have, but I think the leadership of Reform is obliged to the movement it created. I think it is absolutely vital that we understand the movement owes us nothing. We owe the movement. And if we stand for the constitutional sovereign democratic unit that is the United Kingdom, then we must be a democracy ourselves. We can't say we trust the people of the UK to run the UK, but we don't trust the people of the UK to direct the leadership of Reform UK. That just doesn't wash. It's ideologically, fundamentally inconsistent. And the final issue I have, it's a personal issue, so forgive me, is that I discovered over the last few days that actually HQ at Reform has forbidden the new branches they've set up from having me speak to them. I don't know why, because at every meeting that I've been to, I have done nothing other than bang the drum of our message and bang the drum of the party. But it seems these criticisms that I have, ideological as well as constitutional criticisms I have of the party, are an affront to them. So they have shut me down from speaking to the very people whom I galvanized into a movement alongside Richard and others, whom I galvanized into a movement. And I find that, frankly, unacceptable. And I would say I'm resigning as a member of Reform. I can't resign as a member of Reform because I'm not a member. No one's a member. The only members are Richard and Nigel. But I think that their prohibition on my speaking, their prohibition on my free speech, their reluctance to democratize, their ideological differences with me now leaves me no option but to say I'm not affiliated with Reform, I'm afraid. I am ideologically separate from Reform. They're not treading the path that I think needs to be trodden, and I fear for their fascination with recruiting Tories, and I fear for their reluctance to democratise and really trust the movement that we created. And so very sadly, I am no longer a part of the movement. I'm a part of the movement. I'm no longer part of Reform UK, whatever that means, because as I say, you can't actually be a member. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry to deliver what I suspect might be bad news to some of you. Thank you.